Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Own Your Good. Today, I am excited to talk with a friend that we actually work in the same building but haven't seen each other for a while because of the COVID pandemic thing. Amber, welcome.
Thank you. It's so good to be here.
Go ahead and introduce yourself, and we'll get to basically what I think you owning your good looks like to me from my perspective. And we can talk about that in your experience. Go ahead.
My name's Amber McCord, and I have been teaching for 15 years. I teach dance and English, and yeah, I mean, that's about it.
Awesome. I did see recently you got a new puppy.
I did. We got a miniature Australian Shepherd,
Oh, gee.
and we have a girl, so he now has a friend, so that's kind of fun.
Awesome. We got a dog a few weeks ago too, and it was a total surprise learning curve. But it's been awesome because though my kids wanted a pet, they didn't really anticipate this happening. So they've all been like, "Yeah, I'll take her out. Yeah, I'll go feed her. Yeah, I'll go take care of." And it's just been an awesome experience to see my kids own something, take care of it. It's
Absolutely.
fun. So your kids okay with that?
Oh yes, they didn't know either. I surprised them, so they were super excited about it. But it's just fun to see like how much they love another creature and
Yeah,
just want to like be involved with it. And
it is fun. It
yeah,
is cool to see sort of what they might be like nurturing something in the future.
right. My little girl, she will not put the dog down. Like I don't think he's walked at all because somebody is always carrying him, mostly her. And she's 5, so she kind of like grabs him around the neck, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's gonna strangle him, but
But he's going
it's
to be
good.
the one that goes to her, right? That's going to be the relationship.
Absolutely. It's so funny.
Good deal. Cool. So, the idea of this podcast being owning your good, knowing what you're good at, that discovery of finding whatever it is that you love. You're a dance teacher and you're an English teacher. So, those are obviously two things that you really enjoy. And we'll get to those. But what other things have you experienced in life that have made you sort of excite, vibrate with energy? Like, I can't not stop thinking about this.
I really, really love teaching, obviously.
Mhm.
Being around students is always something that's fun. I
They have a
always get,
different energy
they
than
do.
adults.
And I always get asked, like, because I mean, we both teach high school, and people are like, oh my gosh, that sounds like the worst job in the world.
Yeah,
And I always tell them I have the best job in the world because kids are way better than adults. They're not jaded, they don't look at the world the same way.
totally.
And so I love like working with younger people, and I always have. I mean, I taught dance starting when I was in high school,
Hmm.
and just that energy from like a 4 or 5 year old, and they just I don't know, they give you so many positive vibes and a way to like look at the world differently. So I really love that. I love being in the city. When I was 15, I had the opportunity to go to New York,
Hmm.
and I was there for 8 weeks, and I was doing it with a dance thing. And it was like one of the first times that I realized how much culture is important and how much I maybe wasn't getting in Utah. I mean, I had my
Sure.
limited exposure, but
So
being
you're
in New
from
York,
Utah, but then those first 8 weeks in New York was obviously totally different.
yeah, absolutely. So I think from that experience, like I love going and seeing um, how different people kind of interact. Like I'm definitely a people watcher, so New York was an awesome place to
Yeah,
be. And there's always like art and music, and you just see so much of that come through. So my husband is like kind of like a country person. He
hmm,
wants to be where it's quiet, and I'm totally opposite. I'm
yeah.
like, get me downtown in a city. I want to
The
see
middle of
the art
things.
and the music and all of that. So those are definitely some things that like I guess push my passion or like have been exciting to
Yeah,
me.
yeah. So you were mentioning before we started that Hamilton
Oh yeah.
kind of combines a lot of those things, right? I haven't seen it yet. It just barely put on Disney Plus just recently, and just haven't had a time to get to it yet. But so that is a combination of things, right? That's a combination of history and music and
Yeah, I was watching the interview or this interview with the guy who wrote the music and played the character of Hamilton.
yeah.
And he was like, I can tell Hamilton's story through using rap and going through rap culture, But I love the idea that, I mean, I grew up not really, I knew Alexander Hamilton,
Yeah.
I knew who he was, but the way that he told his story, I was like, oh my gosh, how did I miss all of this in my history class? And it's done in a way that I'm like, this could get people really excited about a piece of history that maybe we haven't paid attention
Yeah.
to. So I love when you have art that can inspire people to want to know more about the world,
Yeah.
or like, open up a book or be like, I want to know what this was about.
Hmm.
So
Exactly. So when you teach dance, I've never taken a dance class, so I don't know. Is it possible to incorporate those types of things to encourage your students to figure out what is driving them to want to dance?
absolutely. So dance is one of my favorite subjects because, first of all, everybody can dance.
Hmm.
There's kind of that stigma when you start teaching that they're like, I can't dance. But when you look back to like the origins of dance and how it started, a lot of it was for rituals
Hmm.
or cultural things. They were celebrating things. You look at, they're trying to tell their stories through dance.
Yeah.
And a lot of them use that as language. And so when you think about even walking, like I tell my students, even the way that you walk is
Yeah.
considered dance. There's no right or wrong with it. It's really exploratory, and you can discover so much about yourself. You can discover emotions. You can express what's going on in the world around you. Like there's so many dance pieces that are based on kind of big historical movements
Sure.
and
Yeah.
trying to tell a story. So,
Yeah. I guess that would be kind of a shocking introduction to dance, talking about how people walk. Because when you see somebody walking, how they're feeling.
right.
You can definitely tell when they're feeling good or they're feeling bad or they think they're all that, right?
Absolutely. It really does tell so much about a person's like mood and character, and we make so many snapshot perception or like judgments
Yeah.
on just that simple thing.
Yeah.
So,
Awesome. What do you think in dance? And I think I'm like a lot of people who are aware of dance and a lot of the popular culture things with dance, ballroom dancing with the stars, and all those things. And so people sort of have their opinion of what they like about dance and how they think they don't have rhythm, so dancing is difficult for them or they can't dance. What types of dance have you maybe not liked and then realized as you started to teach it or taught it more that it wasn't as bad as you thought it was or wasn't as dumb as you thought it was?
so kind of funny. I'm actually a ballet major.
Okay.
So I graduated from the University of Utah in ballet, and I think for most people, ballet is probably the most boring kind
Uh-huh.
of dance.
The times that I've seen the Nutcracker and yeah, uh-huh.
Yes. And I mean, the thing with it is it's so technical, and it has like its own language. Like you can speak steps and it's like speaking sentences.
Sure.
You can say tombe pas and somebody will know what to do. Where you get into other styles and it's like do a 1E and a 2E and a da 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 da.
Sure, sure.
So it's kind of interesting that ballet has its own language, but practicing it takes so much repetition, and it's very slow. Like you have to think
Consciously
about,
think about each step as it's going.
right, it's the foundation of dance for a reason.
See, that
But
totally just changed my perspective of ballet. Like I knew that there were forms or steps or whatever, but to think about it like you're forming a sentence or a thought
mhm,
just blew my mind.
honestly, it's hard,
Oh, for
right? So
sure.
people
From
who
what I've
practice
seen.
it are like awesome. I mean, I have so much respect for my friends who've gone on to be professionals, because it's so challenging. And honestly, I remember being little and hating going to ballet.
Hmm.
And I think it's on because it's so slow, and so repetitious. And we live in a world where it's like instant
Yeah.
gratification, and I want to do it. And you look at other forms like hip hop and
Yeah. It
you
seems
know
pretty easy and kind of sloppy
contemporary,
and
yeah,
yeah.
like there's so much, like it just, I guess, engages you in a different way. So Ballet, definitely growing up, was not my favorite.
But fundamentally, it sets you up for everything else.
Yes.
Okay.
It's like the foundation of everything else you do. And honestly, it's one of the things that I grew to love. I obviously became a
Yeah.
ballet major, but it wasn't until I was probably 17 where I was like, oh, I really, really like doing
So almost 10
this.
years. So that's one thing that I want to point out.
Mhm.
And as we've had different conversations with people, and as we will continue, a lot of times you have to keep doing something, even if you're trying to figure out a different way to do it, or accept that it is what it is, because eventually it will take you somewhere. It's always about a journey and the process and figuring something out, and not just saying, oh, I want to be a ballet dancer, and you're a junior in high school and it happens. It doesn't, nothing works like that.
No. Actually, when I was older, I read Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers, and he
Hmm.
talks about the 10,000 hour rule with
Yeah.
it. And it was like mind blowing to me because I was like,
So for those that don't
oh.
know the 10,000 hour theory, or whatever the rule, whatever it is, can you explain it just quickly?
So, yeah, so Gladwell, he looks at a whole bunch of different people who you would consider to be like experts. Like he looks at the
Sure. Yeah.
Beatles, um, and I can't remember who else he uses. He references a whole bunch of different
But people
people.
who have become successful.
Yes.
Okay.
And he basically says you have to put in at least 10,000 hours of practice before you can be considered an expert in whatever it
Oh, that's not
is.
overwhelming.
I know. So he talks about why can't I think of his name? Bill Gates.
Okay.
And he would sneak out of his house in the middle of the night and go to the local university at a young age because he knew nobody was charging for internet, and he would just get online and practice coding, and he
Wow.
talks about this in it. And so a lot of people are like, well, he's a college dropout, I can be successful, I can just go do whatever he does, it's not that hard. And he's like, no, because he's been practicing since he was,
Yeah.
this age. So,
And he had something, there was something about that that made him want to figure it out.
right,
New technology, new ideas, whatever.
right.
Awesome.
So when I read that as an adult,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, now this kind of like, it kind of blew my mind because it was like, it almost took up to that point for me to really like develop, I guess, that like passion and drive
Yeah.
to continue to do a form
And
that
you're already
I don't
halfway
really
there.
like. I know, right? So, anyways, ballet was one that I didn't necessarily love,
Yeah.
but my perspective has really changed on
And I
it
think
throughout
that
the years.
happens as you start to see progress.
Yes.
And with something as slow as ballet, I feel like piano is the same way. Learning how to play the piano, you start off with so many slow steps, songs that are just one note. And it's frustrating because it's just Mary Had a Little Lamb or whatever the song is. And it's not until like 2 or 3 years later where all of those fundamental steps become something that you're sort of proud of playing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good comparison. I haven't thought about it that way, but exactly. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think that happens in the school system too. The first part of learning all of those steps when you're in elementary school might be fun. But then having to apply those later in junior high and high school
Right.
is stressful.
It is. It's hard. And especially if, and I think this is one thing I learned in ballet, it's such a technical thing where if you miss something before,
Mm-hmm.
trying to fill in those gaps or correct the error is really difficult because you've developed like a bad habit.
Yeah.
And so
In all that practice.
you go back to that tendency. But I think that same thing happens in school where if we miss a gap or, we struggle with
Yeah.
something, we try to cover it up with a coping strategy rather than trying to correct it.
And relearn it or fix it or whatever the problem was.
Right.
Yeah. Since ballet, since graduating from college, from university, where did you go from there?
So I always got asked, what in the world are you going to do with a ballet degree?
Yeah.
Right?
Seriously, that's probably every parent's worry is you got a ceramics degree and there's nothing wrong with any of this, right?
Right.
You can make a life around whatever it is that you love.
Right. I knew when I was doing my ballet degree that definitely was something that was in my mind. Like, what are you going to do with a ballet degree? And dance is kind of like a professional football player. Their career is a lot shorter than, you know,
Most other
being a
careers.
teacher or
Yeah.
whatever. So it's like, how do you sustain your passion for something, but still do
Yeah.
like something that is going to actually allow you to live and make money and whatever
Yeah.
else.
And the competition is high too, because there's only so many places where you can go and say, this is what I do.
Right. I constantly got asked that question, and I was like, well, I really like English. I actually never considered myself like an awesome English student. I was always a good student. But it's not because I was smart. It's because I like to learn and I
Yeah.
like to work hard. And I think dance actually taught me that, because there's nothing, I mean, some people are given natural ability, but I wasn't one of those people who had amazing
Yeah.
like natural talent. I wasn't terrible.
Yeah.
Like I had some tools to help me, but I wasn't, I had to work really, really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that kind of followed me in school. So I was like, I really enjoyed my English and my literature classes because I loved having conversations. It was so interesting to me to talk about culture and things like that, and to see what people were going through from different perspectives. And so I decided, I was like, well, I think I'll kind of maybe want to take some English classes too. So I ended up dual majoring in ballet and English.
Okay.
And then from that point, I really had to think like, do I want to continue and go down this professional pathway with dance? Or is it time to kind of like share my love for it with other people? And honestly, in dance, it's kind of like my husband played college baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, if you really want a chance to get into a company, it might require you to move around and things like that. I got married and was like, all right, I think, you know,
Yeah.
I want to kind of move on. And so during like this whole time, I've always taught at a studio.
Okay.
There hasn't been a period in my life where I haven't taught at a dance studio, but I was like, I love working with kids. I love, you know, this part of my life with dance. If I can mesh those two together, then I want to do that. And that's where I decided, hey, maybe I could be a
Sure.
school teacher.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how that developed. So that's really like what I did after in deciding,
Yeah.
because I finished my dance degree before I did my teaching degree, but that's really what kind of drove me
Yeah.
into that field.
Was that heartbreaking in any way? Was that a frustrating, regretful decision to change that much, or is that much of a change at all for you?
No, honestly, because I still dance.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm missing out on that part of my life. I just get to share my experiences with other people. And I know you and I have kind of talked about this, but I realize that yes, doing it myself is really awesome and it gives me my own experience and I still practice that. But when you can put it on somebody else and see that click, that's really exciting. And so I don't think I've ever had regrets because I love helping other people kind of develop that.
Yeah.
And I have, you know, just in teaching from a younger age, like I always love working with the little ones because you'd see like things click and
they're
they
physically
were so
difficult.
Excited.
It's difficult for them to do something, but then as their muscles change and as they grow, you can see that development and they know that they've made progress, and
Right.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Thinking about the future from here, a lot of teachers spend their whole life as a teacher. That's what they do. Are there any like I wish I coulds? Like if I could stop teaching, or when I stop teaching, or maybe I'm not going to teach until I'm retired, what's the next like I wish dream phase?
Oh, that's a really good question. Because honestly, I've had a lot of people ask me, do you want to teach? And a lot of teacher friends be like, what do you want to do?
Yeah. As if teaching wasn't
right.
worth it.
Right. I'm kind of a nerd, and so like I really do love school, and
Mm-hmm.
I can see myself going back studying something else.
Yeah.
Like I love communication. I
Uh,
love the way that people interact. I would love to like maybe explore something in that area, but I don't know. That's really tough. I don't really see myself ever going into something else. Like I know I don't want to go into
yeah.
administration, and I don't want to do anything else with my life in
Would it,
terms of
I don't know if it would be worth it. It could be because you're in charge, manage your hours, hire your group, but would you open a studio?
no.
Not so similar to administration. It's like, I don't want to be the boss. I
uh,
just want to work one on one or one on 30 or whatever the
right.
class size is.
I kind of have like some reasonings behind that. I've seen a lot of people who are close to me who have gone into dance and they've opened their own
Mm-hmm.
studios. And I see the stress that goes along with that.
Yeah.
And it's all about the management part of it. They're having to deal with.
You just give your husband that job.
I know that's true, but I don't want to do that. I feel like that kills your creativity, and
Yeah.
that's why I love dance in the first place, is for the creative aspect. I have no desire to like do the business aspect.
Yeah.
So
So it's not about the money. It's
no.
definitely about the experience and the
Yes,
relationships and the growth.
right. If I wanted to make a lot of money, I would not be a school teacher, and I would not have a degree in dance, and I wouldn't have a degree in English,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So when you teach, we're teaching high school kids,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know which classes, if there are different types of classes or if it is just dance and you cover a lot of different things. When you teach these kids that are 15, 16, 17 years old, 18 years old, are there styles that you introduce them to where everybody sort of groans, moans, oh no, not, and then they end up liking it? Or are there projects where they're like, oh yeah, we're ready for hip hop, and then they either love it or they don't? I don't know. Any interesting stories there?
So in my CE dance class,
So CE is concurrent enrollment for university.
yes.
Okay.
So in that class, we really start with dance like as its very first form, and we talk about how like dance is shapes and things like that. And then we progress through all of the different kind of evolutions of dance, like
Mm-hmm.
to now, and how did we get to what we see today. And one of the units that we do actually is cultural dances.
Mm-hmm.
And so I told my kids we were doing Bollywood, which honestly is not something that I've practiced
Yeah.
on my own. Like
I can see a picture of like what I would see as a movie cover or something, but
yeah.
it's dance style. I have no idea what that is.
Yeah. Bollywood is upbeat, and
No,
it's,
it's a description of something that I don't know what it looks like. It's
I can't think of what that movie's called. It was an Oscar winning movie, and the kid was like on a Jeopardy type show.
hmm.
Do you know what I'm
I
talking
don't think
about?
I saw it, but it's
I can't think of the title of
yeah.
it. That was the first time that I really was like introduced to what Bollywood
Okay.
would be.
Yeah.
And then it's been on like shows like So You Think You Can Dance and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So really, really fast footwork, a lot of arm movements, but all of the movements kind of tell some kind of cultural story.
Mm-hmm.
But when I told my kids we're gonna do Bollywood because it's like an Indian based dance,
Yeah.
or I guess I should clarify, from India,
Right.
right?
Right.
So they all were like, "What? I don't want to do that." Like I showed them a couple of videos, and it ended up being one of the things that they loved
Why is it
the
you think
most.
that they didn't like it? Is it because of how it puts you out there and doing something completely different and strange?
I think it makes them uncomfortable because it's something that they haven't ever had to do. And I realized with most of my students, they have dance in their background in some way. There's some
Okay.
kind of cultural tie, but whether or not they've fostered and practiced that is a different
So
story.
they may have had tumbling or dance or cheer experience to take this CE course,
Right.
but they haven't really practiced a lot of different things, just what they're interested in, what they're good at.
Yes.
Okay.
So it really like challenged them. But I think once they realized like the stories that were being told, and it's super fun and upbeat, and like they were laughing so much.
That's
They had
awesome.
such a fun time with it. I had a fun time even just like learning it and teaching it to
Yeah.
them. Um, and so it was kind of a fun experience.
Yeah.
So,
Especially cultural Utah, not cultural Utah, where a lot of people have not left the state. Um, we
right.
do have some diversity because of the Air Force Base.
Yeah.
Um, but that's cool. That's interesting. I wondered, it would be fun to watch that happen, evolve over time.
It was really fun. Super, super fun. Another one was tap.
Yeah.
Like we did a whole
There's
thing
a
at
stigma behind tap.
uh-huh. For sure. Tap is so important though. I mean, until I like started teaching, I didn't realize kind of the cultural ties and how like the rhythms, I guess, told stories and things like that.
Yeah.
But they were not excited to do it. And then we started doing it and they were like, "Oh my gosh, this is so
When you see
fun."
videos of Sammy Davis Jr. or
Yeah,
just a few guys from that era, guys, blows your mind.
absolutely. Like it's incredible. They are amazing. I wish that I could be that awesome. Like
Right?
every time you watch them, you're like, oh
But
my
then you think
gosh.
of the whatever the image is that you see of some amateur or whatever tap dancer, right? And you're like, oh, this is dumb. This is loud. This is obnoxious.
Right. Well, and I honestly think a lot of people associate tap with just like musical theater because it's obviously involved in musical
Mm-hmm.
theater. And I think students, especially, are either like on the side of I love theater or I hate theater.
Yeah.
And so seeing them, like the kids on the side of I hate theater, try tap was interesting because I think they just associate it with that. But then, I mean, I showed them like some tap competitions and things like
Yeah.
that. And there's these guys who look like they shouldn't be dancers, I guess.
Yeah.
Not that there's like a certain
Well,
look,
it's the
but
same thing when football players all of a sudden became interested in ballet because of how it helps them in their football game.
right.
There's, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But there's also sort of a what?
Exactly. Exactly. So it was super fun to see them like, oh, this is something that's kind of cool
I
and
think that's what I love about
can do.
teaching. You present something to them, and it could be any topic, any issue, whatever. And there's this automatic, I've heard about this,
Right.
and then you actually investigate it and you actually look at it and then you digest it for a few days and it becomes something that you actually care about.
Right. Well, I know you've taught Shakespeare,
Yeah.
and obviously I have, and that's always like the reaction. And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
he is the best storyteller ever. Like, obviously, I hold him in very high
Yeah.
regard, but I'm like, he is telling the human story so well.
The conflict, the personal desire, the
Right.
regret or revenge, or yeah,
And
there's
everything he
everything that
writes
people deal
about
with.
is still relevant today.
Yeah.
Like, it blows my
Have
mind.
you seen Patrick Stewart since COVID-19 began, since the pandemic and lockdown and everything? He's been doing a sonnet a day
Oh no,
on his
I haven't
Facebook
seen
page.
that.
And so he'll just sit down in his yard or in his house or wherever and open up his book and read one of Shakespeare's sonnets. And sometimes he'll talk about it, and sometimes he'll talk about how this one makes him uncomfortable. It's pretty neat.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So, dance and English and teaching kids. Have kids ever brought something to you that you didn't know about in dance?
All the time.
Yep.
Like,
Any examples of things that
yeah.
you like? I should have known this.
Well, a lot of times they'll ask, like, I have to use a lot of metaphors in dance. I have to, like, really, especially teaching people who haven't danced before, you have to make a lot of comparisons that relate to them.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'll get questions like, how am I supposed to feel my hip rotating or whatever? Because to me, it's so automatic. And so then I'm sitting there and I have to really think about a good way to describe it to them in terms that relate to them. And I'm always like, oh my gosh, why haven't I thought about this before? Like in the sense of like I should be able to explain
Yeah.
this more clearly to them. So that's one example. And then a lot of times they'll ask like history type questions.
Hmm.
And I mean, I've taken dance history and things like that, but I think there's so much to it
Yeah.
where I have to be like, hey, I'm going to have to get back to you.
Yeah.
That's
Let's
a
both go
really
Google
great
this and we'll talk about it
question.
tomorrow.
Yeah. So sometimes they'll give you like those trivia questions, and it's just because they start to develop like that curiosity,
Yeah.
and they think of things that I haven't ever really thought about.
And that comes from their perspective,
Yeah.
how they were raised, where they grew up, all of those things that they're thinking, this is starting to apply to me now. How can I communicate this? Or what does this mean?
Right.
Yeah.
That would be another one. I don't know. That's a good question. I feel like I get them all the time, and I'm like, I really should know that. And
Yeah.
believe me, I all the time with my students, I'm like, I think that's a fantastic question, and I will get back to
I
you on
don't know. Let's
that.
go look.
So I
That's
think
awesome.
that's nice as a teacher. We always get to be learners too.
Yeah. When it comes to dance, you just said something. I've been doing this for so long, or I don't know why I don't know how to explain this. It's something that you know how to do. How were you introduced to this, or was it always just a part of what you did? Was it a family thing, or an older sister or mom or whatever?
So I started dancing when I was 3. And when I say I was dancing at 3, like, let's be honest, it's
Sure.
like definitely wasn't anything super structured. It's just really exploratory
Yeah.
and like play.
So
Like,
somebody noticed that you were naturally moving, athletic in some way at 3.
well, and I liked it.
Yeah.
I mean, but yes, I guess I wanted to move. I think my mom wanted me to like be in something. She was a dancer as well, and so there's always like
You see what you want to do right in front of you.
right.
Yeah.
So I started dancing obviously at a really young age, and I think so much of what you start to learn, it's kind of like being in school. It just becomes ingrained in you. Like I remember I had teachers and we would have to have like dance vocabulary quizzes, and I
Hmm.
was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to do this." And they would talk cuz all of like ballet is in French.
Yeah.
And so you had to know all of the terminology, and they're like, "Okay, fondue means to melt. So we have to think about our movement, and that means to melt. So I want you to visualize as you're doing this like that stretchy cheese,
Yeah.
like and things like that." And so because of like that kind of being embedded in you from such a young age, I realized like when I started teaching, I knew what things were, but actually telling somebody else how to do it and how to feel it
Yeah.
was so different. And another aspect of it that I think has been really challenging is like emotions, because
Hmm.
when you're choreographing, you want to pull out different kinds of emotions, and you want the dance to feel a certain way or convey a certain message. But sometimes you ask people to display emotions that they haven't had the
Yeah.
experience of. I remember when I was in college, one of my professors did a Holocaust piece, and it was one of the most challenging things that I had done because, I mean, she showed us a whole bunch of pictures and she talked about the history and what she was trying to convey in the story, but she kept getting on us about how we were moving, and it needed to give this kind of emotion, and we needed to look a certain way.
Yeah.
And it was so hard because I've never experienced that before.
Anything like that.
No.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the things that's like beautiful is it helps you to develop that empathy, because you're having to try to like put yourself in those experiences, but at the same time, on the flip side of that, when I've been choreographing and I'm like, hey, I want you to do it this way, sometimes they're like, well, they're trying, but they don't understand.
It's like blues music.
Yeah.
I can't really be sorrowful if I've never been mad or sad or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So That's, I mean,
Yeah, that's frustrating. But then knowing that eventually they'll get to a point where they can express themselves through that, they'll know some terminology or words that match that.
right. Well, and I think one of the things that's like so beautiful with it is it requires you to have to research when you
Hmm.
are uncomfortable. Like it forces you to have to do more research so that you can develop some kind of understanding of what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, which I
So,
think matches right up with literature in English. You know that things like the Holocaust exist, but to really understand it does take a lot of reading and observing and figuring out things were happening and what person's life was like. And when you read the Diary of Anne Frank or the book that is her journal, the kids are shocked when it ends.
right.
They're like, we know what happened, but at this point in time, and so you can imagine because her story and her life and what she was explaining just stops. There's no drama, there's no climax, it just stops.
Just ends.
And
Yeah.
we're not used to stories ending that way. And
No.
so to communicate or experience that in a dance setting, I can imagine that's just foreign, off, out. I don't know what that is.
Right.
But then they experience it throughout high school. Have you seen maybe in the CE dance class where they start off the semester not sure how to experience something, and then by the end of the semester, the end of the year, however long the course is, do they have the opportunity to display the emotion that they do have, the things that they are connected to?
Yes. We do so many types of like they hate me for it, but it's so good for them.
Yeah,
We do a lot of exploratory things that are theme based. And okay, I want you to, create movement, create a movement phrase dealing with whatever. And sometimes like students have had to research like a topic that they want to and convey that in dance. But I love that they're having that opportunity to kind of be challenged
yeah.
in that way. And they're like, I hate this, I hate this. And then they do it. And the things they come up with is amazing. Like it's so incredible to see their growth. And I think especially at the high school level, because they come in not with like my little kids who are
Yeah.
so excited to be
I'll
in
do
dance.
whatever you say.
Yeah, they come in very guarded and very uncomfortable. And by the end of it, they're all laughing and they're great friends. And
There's
I
probably a lot
think,
of trust
yeah,
daring to put emotion and perform in front of people.
oh, for sure. I think you have to be really vulnerable and you have to kind of let go of like, I'm being judged.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
Oh, for sure. Especially in high school.
Yeah.
That's the last thing you want is to be judged.
Right. So, I mean, I always have to preface my class like dance looks different on everybody's bodies and it's beautiful and we're going to, you know, this isn't about doing everything perfect. It's about getting messages across and
Yeah.
what that shows. And by the end, like it really is beautiful to see them just develop like their relationships, put their walls down, and put something out there that makes them uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So,
So when a student does eventually learn how to demonstrate the emotion that they're feeling, can you see other students understanding that?
oh, so one of my favorite things is like afterwards we'll kind of talk about different aspects of it. What did you guys notice? And all of them are so quick to be like none of what they talk about is ever technical. They'll sometimes say I liked the way this movement looked, but I would say 95% of it is about the story and the emotion
Yeah.
in the piece, and they're telling how they felt as a viewer watching them convey that message.
I think that's one of the biggest things about art in general. Literature, pieces of art, things that you visually see, music and dance. We don't appreciate it. We don't understand it. We don't like it because we don't understand it.
Yeah.
But they're learning how to interpret things so that they can appreciate it.
Right. Well, and I have so many students in all levels who are like, my parents tell me like dance is dumb. Why am I taking this class? Especially boys.
Yeah.
Um, I get that a lot. And so it's so nice to like actually see them grow in that way.
Yeah.
And I guess,
It's okay to experience different things because it makes your perception of the world better.
right,
Even as a guy who's
right,
not supposed to have emotions.
right. Put those down.
Yeah. Awesome. So this has been fascinating to me, learning about how similar dance is to other things that I appreciate and enjoy. And I mean, it makes me want to take a dance class.
Awesome. You should come take one.
If for whatever reason dance were not possible, what would you do?
I don't really see dance
As like
not
a
being...
job.
Oh, okay. I'm like, I don't ever see like...
Yeah, I guess I should have finished that.
No. You're good. Well, I think the thing that's like beautiful about it, or really like the thing that I love about it, is there's no requirements on where it has to happen and how old you have to be. I mean, obviously it gets harder as you get older,
Sure.
but I don't ever see myself like not practicing on my own, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. So, I mean, I guess that's a hard question because I haven't really ever envisioned my life without it. Even during the pandemic, every single day I was doing a dance class, and throughout the summer, I've been doing dance classes online and
So it's that
things
much a
like
part
that.
of you that there is no option of not doing.
Yeah, I really don't ever see myself not having it in my life. It might not be on a stage, it might not be in front of students, but I can't picture my life, I guess, without it.
Yeah. That is amazing.
So,
And that journey will continue in some form for as long as possible.
yeah.
That is awesome. That is one thing that I hope everyone can somehow achieve, whether it is a job or whether it is a hobby, that whatever it is that you love, whatever you feel like you're good at, whatever people are showing you that you're good at, that you take time to own that, like make it happen because it's that important to you. And sometimes that's difficult as you have a job that is not that thing, or maybe you start a family or whatever the situation is, right? A lot of things try to get in the way. But if it's important enough to you, then you make it happen.
Well, one thing I've learned, whether it's a relationship or a passion, you always make time for the things that are important. You can always find, like, you prioritize your life, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like a list. And if
You
it's
have to eat
that,
before you can go do anything, and you have to
right.
order things. Yeah.
And so if it's that important to you, which your passion should be important to you, like every single person should have time for doing something they love every day.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what's the point?
It's just bland and drab, and it makes me think of the beginning of the movie Joe versus the Volcano, where everybody's just walking to work, and it looks miserable.
Right. And I think I am a little bit lucky because I get to go to do something that I love every day.
Yeah.
And it's built into my career.
Mm-hmm.
So I do have like that.
So
as
you're
an
one of those
advantage.
annoying people that says, I get to go to work and it doesn't feel like work.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much. Like I honestly have days where I'm teaching dance and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm getting paid to do this. Like that's so crazy to me.
So how realistic do you think that is for everybody? Everybody to have a job that they like?
Well, I think it's realistic for everybody, but whether or not they decide that it's, I guess, worth it is a different story. Because for me, I mean, let's be honest, school teachers,
Right.
we don't make a ton of money. Dance teachers are kind of in that same boat, but nothing's ever been about money for me. I need to feel fulfilled intellectually. I need to feel fulfilled creatively. And if I'm not happy. Like I've definitely had jobs before where I've like worked in a call center and stuff like that. And it's the worst thing in the world.
You can't wait to get home because you're not there.
Right. But I do think people get really challenged because sometimes doing the things that you love don't always supply a lot of income. And so you have to really, I
So
guess,
maybe it's just an energy rejuvenation system. You just know that you have to do what you have to do to survive.
right,
And life is really about the thing that you do on the weekend or at night or whenever you're not working.
right. But I do think everybody can, I mean, if they really, want to to incorporate that in their life, it's
I think
possible.
so too. So, generic advice doesn't have to be dance related, art related, or English related. Somebody doesn't know. Maybe they're 15, maybe they're 30, maybe their kids are just getting out of the house and they're not quite retiring, but they have a lot of time now and they don't know what they like. They don't know what they're good at. How does somebody find that?
I honestly, I would think that a lot of people maybe have things that they like, but it hasn't been developed or they haven't had encouragement. Because I think sometimes the things that we really are passionate about,
Mm-hmm.
we're afraid to put out in front of other people because we want to be validated.
Yeah.
And if we're rejected, all of a sudden it's like, oh,
So if I say that I am 40 years old and I still like to build Legos and design my own kits, I might not say that to my friends because, what are you, 12?
right. Which is totally fine. We're big fans of Lego
No,
Masters for
yeah.
the record.
But
No,
you're afraid of saying anything because you don't want anybody to say that's dumb. And if they say that's dumb, I'm not going to keep doing that. I don't want anybody to think I'm dumb.
right. And I do think it's very sad the way that we place so much of our self-worth and our value on other people's opinions.
So whatever it is that you like, and if you don't know what you like, maybe make a list of what you like.
I think, yeah, I think writing is such a good tool to develop what you like. So
Yeah.
lists or even just like journaling your experiences and going back and being like, hey, because writing allows you to relive that
Mm-hmm.
experience. So I went out and I did whatever.
Camping or gardening or whatever. And I really enjoyed
Right,
that feeling of being in the shade or
right. And I think if you write a lot, you kind of start to notice the things that you go back to or circle back to.
keep thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's great advice.
But
Journaling or listing the things that are important to you or the things that you would spend your time on. And then I would maybe suggest the next step would be take the day that you have off and figure out what that looks like to you now in the life that you're in.
sure.
Whatever that looks like, could you take a day and go do it?
Well, and you said that, and it really got me, you got me thinking about this. I don't always consider myself to be an adventurous person. I'm
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a routine person,
Yeah.
but I've challenged myself this past little bit, especially during the pandemic, to try new things and to put things like to do things that are out of my comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know you're an awesome cook. I am not, but I've like explored with recipes
Uh-huh.
and even going on hikes that I don't know if I'm like they're going to be super hard
Yeah.
and challenging. But I think it's like if you're really stuck, go be adventurous and try new things
Yeah.
too. Because that's how you have those experiences. Like, don't continue to do the same thing like me. Like, I'm a
Yeah.
routine person. Go try something different.
My wife and I were talking about this the other day. We like to end the day watching something. And it's not a long, like 5-hour binge. It's an episode and you fall asleep in the middle of it
Right.
or at the end of it. But that's not fun. That's barely surviving if that's all that you're doing. But then I think about people that I know who are obsessed with movies and strings of actors and different things that are happening. And that's the thing that they love. That's the thing that gives them this creative energy, this buzz of there's something that I'm good at. There's something that I know how to do.
Right.
Awesome. Well, Amber, it has been awesome talking to you. I've missed seeing you at school.
Me too. It's been good to see you.
And school's supposed to start in about a month.
Yay.
Thanks so much, everybody, for listening to Own Your Good today. I hope you have gotten something that will help you figure out what it is that you like, or maybe you can share this with somebody that will help them own their good. Thank you for joining me today on Own Your Good. I'd like to give a special thanks to Arches Audio. They are the ones that provided this awesome music. If you need anything for a project, I would go and check them out. They have a great selection of music and other services to help you with your creative projects. I hope that you found this valuable. If you enjoyed this episode and it did something for you, or you think somebody might benefit from it, please share this. It would mean a lot to me to help spread this positivity and this idea that people can change, improve, and ultimately own their good.